This battle over an anti-Semitism resolution sweeping Washington, sparking division within Democratic ranks. Will the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, take action against those in her party? That's the question today as we say good morning live in New York. I'm Bill Hemmer. It's Thursday. How you doing,
It's
Smitty?
Thursday. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sandra Smith. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi facing pushback from within her own party and beyond. Rank and file Democrats growing more frustrated by the day with the handling of a stalled resolution meant to formally condemn anti-Semitism as a rebuke to repeated controversial remarks made by freshman Congresswoman Ilhan Omar.
Congresswoman Omar, it seems like there's some confusion among your colleagues. Are you anti-Semitic?
She needs to be careful of her language. We have to be very, very careful of anti-Semitism.
The words of any committee member makes headlines in other countries, even if they don't hear.
Representative Omar embodies a vile, hate-filled, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel bigotry. This is not a time for politics. This is a time for the Democratic leaders in this institution to do the right thing.
We have Fox team coverage. Former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich joins us in a moment, but we begin with Ellison Barber live in Washington. So Ellison, where are we at this hour?
Hey, Sandra. Yeah, well, for now, it's delayed indefinitely. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi told reporters yesterday that it's possible that this might not come up for any sort of vote this week. It is not on the docket for today, and when or if it will get there is really anyone's guess. On Wednesday, the House Democratic Caucus met, and that meeting seemed to further divisions within the party when it comes to this resolution, or at least emphasize them. Some Democrats said House Speaker Nancy Pelosi rushed this. Sources tell Fox News that there was an exchange in the morning meeting where a freshman Democrat argued that leadership failed to inform members about the resolution. But the issues, the disagreements, did not stop there. There's concern about the text of the resolution, with some Democrats saying it needs to address other forms of bigotry and not just anti-Semitism. There were already plans to broaden the resolution, but then there were more concerns. The resolution is largely seen as a rebuke of freshman Representative Ilhan Omar, but some Democrats were worried about putting her name in the resolution. Two sources told Fox News there was concern among some Democrats that mentioning Omar by name could increase security threats against her and further anti-Muslim biases. Fox is told there was also some concern that if Omar is not mentioned by name, her controversial comments are left unchecked, that she could be made into a martyr.
I don't think anyone's questioning that the anti-Semitic comments that were made are unacceptable, right, and we have to make sure that we speak out against them. I think it's the approach and how we do it, and we're working obviously together to try to get there.
Both the president and vice president have weighed in on this, the president calling House Democrats shameful for not taking a stronger stand against anti-Semitism. Sandra?
So a lot of Republicans are speaking out, Ellison. How are Democrats receiving that criticism?
They don't seem to be overly concerned with it. They say that Republicans have their own issues and aren't really one to point fingers at the House Democratic presser. Yesterday, Representative Hakeem Jeffries specifically pointed at Senator Mitch McConnell, saying he has heard in Mr. Jeffries' opinion bad things, controversial remarks come out of the White House, and he says that Mitch McConnell has not commented on those. So until then, he said that the Democratic Party would not be lectured by Mitch McConnell on anything. Sandra?
Ellison Barber in Washington. Ellison, thank you.
You bet.
I believe that all of the members were satisfied with the statements and the responses that I gave to them. I told them that any additional information that they would want, they should feel comfortable to reach out to my counsel, and I would continue to cooperate to the fullest extent of my capabilities.
So that is Michael Cohen late yesterday leaving his closed-door testimony as we get confirmation now that Michael Cohen did, in fact, ask his former attorney for a pardon from the president. Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor, host of a brand new podcast called Newt's World. It's available for download right now. Good-looking shot there. How are you, Mr. Speaker? Good morning to you. So our viewers recall, this is Michael Cohen a week ago yesterday under testimony on the Hill. Watch here.
The pain that I have caused my family and my friends, nothing can do that. And I have never asked for, nor would I accept, a pardon from President Trump.
So now we're looking at this in a new lens. Rudy Giuliani earlier today, here's his tweet. Congressman Cummings said he would make sure there would be terrible consequences if Cohen perjured himself in his latest public testimony. Now at least 3 perjuries. Never asked for a pardon, never sought a government job, and represented foreign entities. Did he lie 3 times?
Well, I think the evidence is pretty clear that he did. But look, Cohen's entire post-FBI career is lying. He was convicted of lying. So the Democrats, largely to embarrass the President of the United States while he was meeting with the North Korean dictator in Hanoi, the Democrats staged this mock show in which a convicted liar comes in to lie again. I think very few people except hardline anti-Trump haters thought that Cohen was credible. And I think that a lot of his stuff, this guy took, I think, about $5 million over a 10-year period from Donald Trump. He seemed to be perfectly happy doing whatever he was doing until the FBI occupied his office and he was faced with going to jail. Suddenly he had a conversion experience caused, I think, by the FBI. And what he said last week was a lie. I have no idea between last week and this week which are the real truth, but he clearly is in danger once again of having committed perjury. And I think several Republican congressmen have written the Justice Department and saying that they think he has to be reinvestigated for new perjury.
Well, Lanny Davis was asked about it. Lanny Davis is an attorney for Michael Cohen. If you look at the hearing video, I see the smile already. Let me get to the question. I'll let you answer that. Lanny Davis is the attorney, long history with the Clintons, sitting behind Michael Cohen's right shoulder throughout the testimony. He had to know what was in that prepared statement. So we got a statement from Lanny Davis just about an hour ago. Here's what he says, in part, prior to Michael Cohen's decision to leave the Joint Defense Group and tell the truth, July 2, 2018, Michael was open to the ongoing dangling of a possible pardon by Trump representatives privately and in the media. After July 2, Mr. Cohen authorized me as a new lawyer to say publicly Mr. Cohen would never accept a pardon from President Trump even if offered. That continues to be the case. How do we square that based on the testimony and the words of Michael Cohen that I just played for you, sir?
Well, I mean, the reason I'm smiling so much is, look, I know Lanny Davis. He's a very smart guy. He's also, frankly, a very funny guy in private. But he's also one of Hillary Clinton's closest friends. I mean, the whole spectacle of Hillary Clinton's close friend manipulating Michael Cohen, and I personally believe a lot of the nastiest language in Cohen's statement came from Lanny, who's having a great time. He's getting paid to attack Hillary Clinton's opponent who defeated Hillary. It makes him feel better. It makes Hillary feel better. I don't know it's very good for Cohen, but I admire Lanny. He's very creative. And I would just remember every time you see him say something, this is one of the closest friends Hillary Clinton has, and that is who's attacking Donald Trump.
Well, I'm not asking you about a personal opinion on Lanny Davis. We don't know him very well. I find him to be quite enjoyable. I'm asking you whether or not Michael Cohen's a liar and whether or not Lanny Davis knew it.
My guess, because I haven't asked Lanny personally, my guess is, A, I'm pretty certain Michael Cohen's a liar. B, I'm pretty certain Lanny Davis knew it. But again, Lanny has got lawyer-client confidentiality. He's protected in knowing it, and he has no obligation as the attorney to come forward. I mean, I think that his obligation is to his client, and he's going to try to, this is a classic case of trying to create a silk purse, out of a sow. I mean, he's got a terrible client with a terrible record who has a terrible habit of lying, and Lanny's got to make the best of it.
Okay. Another topic here. You know what's going on among the House Democrats? Rashida Tlaib, she wants to impeach the president. We heard those comments upon her election. Here's her tweet. Today, I announced later this month, I'll be introducing a resolution to have the Judiciary Committee move on investigating grounds for impeachment. Our democracy must be protected. You have 3 freshman Democrats that seem to be waving the dog of the Democratic leadership. How's Nancy Pelosi going to manage this, sir?
I think Nancy's in a very challenging spot, although she'd rather be Speaker and be in a challenging spot than be a minority leader. She has freshmen who don't care about her opinion. Remember, if you're a freshman Democrat, the 3 House leaders are the same age as your grandparents. I mean, they're not father and mother figures. These are grandparents. And I think that if you think about a typical, 27-year-old relating to their grandparent, you have some idea of how they view Nancy Pelosi. She has limited control over them. A number of them, frankly, don't care what she thinks and assume that they'll be there long after she is. And I think that her caucus will be continuously a mess because the cross pressure, if you're one of the new freshmen from a Donald Trump district, you are sort of terrified by watching how far to the left your party's going. If, on the other hand, you're from a hardcore left-wing district, you're thrilled at the courage of your nutcake left-wing representative. So I think the tension in that caucus is just going to grow every week.
See the Wall Street Journal today? They said they make the House Freedom Caucus look like powder puffs. That's the editorial. What happens on Omar quickly in the time we have left here? Ilhan Omar and the resolution.
I think the pressure keeps building, and I think at some point the Democrats will hope that it goes away, but I think it won't go away, and eventually they'll have to vote to, at a minimum, rebuke her, and at a maximum take her off the Foreign Relations Committee.
Thank you, sir. We'll check out Newt's World. Thank you, sir. Newt Gingrich there in Washington. We'll talk again. Thank you. Appreciate that. David Axelrod. As Newt Gingrich has told us a couple times already, he made a mistake in the 1990s over the Bill Clinton matter. And Axelrod saying, you don't do this. Take it slow, but we'll see which way they go based on leadership's decisions.
Fascinating reaction on all the top stories this morning. Meanwhile, there's this new reports and satellite images coming in citing activity at a North Korean missile site, sparking new concerns. Kim Jong-un could be ramping up his nuclear weapons program. But the Trump administration still hopeful for a deal. So what happens next with all of this? We're going to bring in former Ambassador Bill Richardson. Plus, there's this.
We've just toured part of the devastation, part of the hardest hit area where most of the deaths occurred, and y'all, it's horrendous.
Widespread devastation. This tornado on the ground for 70 miles in Alabama. That close-knit community now coming together to cope with tragedy. And we'll talk with a high school coach about how the school is stepping up down there in Alabama.
Looking forward to talking to him. And the DHS secretary warning 1 million illegal immigrants are expected to arrive in this country the end of next year. More on her contentious and emotional hearing about border security. Congressman Adam Kinzinger joins us with his take next.
I went down to the border, keeping an open mind on the issue of whether this is an emergency or not. I wanted to make sure that I got kind of a different perspective.
Of Paul Manafort in Alexandria, Virginia today, the former Trump campaign chair will be learning his fate for tax and bank fraud after being convicted of 8 felony counts. Manafort facing the real possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison. We're going to bring you those details as soon as we get them on America's Newsroom.
Fireworks on Capitol Hill. House Democrats clashing with Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen. All this over border security. Nielsen calling the situation a legitimate national emergency, offering some stunning stats, too, about illegal immigrants at the border.
At the current pace, we are on track to encounter close to 1 million illegal aliens at our southern border this year. This is not a manufactured crisis. This is truly an emergency.
Are we still putting children in cages?
To my knowledge, CBP never purposely put a child in a cage if you mean a cage like this.
I've seen the cages. I just want you to admit that the cages exist.
Sir, they're not cages when we have families with children. We have to give every girl a pregnancy test over 10. This is not a safe journey.
Is your oath to the American people, your oath to the President of the United States?
No, man. The oath, as you know, is to the Constitution and the people.
You have the ability to make independent determinations.
I do what I believe is best for the men and women of DHS in this country.
About a 3-hour hearing. It was heated. Congressman Adam Kinzinger, member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, member of the Air National Guard. Sir, how you doing? I know you were just at the border about a week ago. You met with the president of this topic yesterday. You think about the headlines from this yesterday. Democrats were insistent on going back to the so-called cages. We've seen pictures of these. It seems based on the pictures that these are 20 feet high chain link fences that are contained within warehouses. I don't know how you improve the system. But I think the major point is that 1 million illegals could cross the border this year alone. So what do we do about it? And how come Congress in Washington hasn't figured out how to fix it, sir?
Well, because part of the problem is nobody wants to give the other side a victory, and especially the left right now. I mean, I came back and I said, look, I want to fix the immigration system, but we have to do border security. And up until yesterday, the arguments were, well, border crossings are at a record low. How do you even know there's all these issues with border crossings? And then yesterday it comes out that we're at a 10-year high, and now it becomes, well, obviously the Trump administration has failed. It's not true. It's just we got to secure the border. The Trump administration is doing everything he can to do it, and Democrats want to go back to this old, policy that was started under President Obama, calling them cages, when in reality, if you look at what the alternative is, if you have an unaccompanied child that comes up and they don't have a relative in the United States, they're either detained, held in a facility, or else you have to release them into the United States to nobody. A 10-year-old kid, you just put them out on the street and say, there you go, good luck. And then when you have people that come up with adults, in some cases these adults lie and say they're their parents and they're not. Nobody has IDs. We're supposed to just accept that at their word. So the problem is, while it makes for great campaign lines and an attack against the Trump administration, when you have to look 2 or 3 layers deep to see what's really going on.
What about the human issue here? Pregnancy tests to every girl who's age 10 or older? This is a humanitarian crisis.
That's right. The statistics say that 1/3 of women and girls that make the journey from Central America to here are raped or sexually assaulted. You have to give them a pregnancy test. It's awful. It's terrible to talk about. But when when the Democrats try to say that it's, Border Patrol or it's the administration that's terrorizing these people, that have PTS symptoms at the end of this, it's actually the human traffickers that convince them to do it, that do these terrible things to people. And it's also the parents that send their kids up here without any adult supervision, the unaccompanied minors. Tell me how that's good for a 10-year-old kid to send them in a group of people and say, good luck.
No, you met with the president yesterday, shared a lot of those feelings there. Quickly here, I just want to get to this tweet that you sent out. Anti-Semitism, you write, has no place in this Congress or this country. Representative Omar should be removed from the House Foreign Affairs Committee. We must hold ourselves to a higher standard in office. I don't know what the Democratic leadership does. What do you think they do now?
Look, this is not your father's Democratic Party. If it was ever more obvious than today, I don't know when it was more obvious. They can't agree to condemn anti-Semitism. So look, Representative Omar can say whatever she wants. It's America. She's elected. But the Democrats can take her off of the committee that has to deal with these issues, because everything that we say on committee may not make front news headlines in the United States, but it does in the country we're talking about. Think about the impact. What do the Democrats stand for? We took a stand in some in our party and pulled him off of a committee. They need to do the same thing with anti-Semitism, for goodness sakes.
Sir, thank you for your time.
Anytime.
Adam Kinzinger, the Republican from Illinois. We'll talk again. 21 past the hour now, Sandra.
All right, meanwhile, we are going to have the latest developments, 2 big new developments in Venezuela, and also this story on Facebook, privacy scandals, now launching a new initiative there saying users will not have to worry about connecting with their friends. We'll have more on that.
Also, what could have been, how Mount Rushmore was monuments and man-made. Statue of Liberty, the Lincoln Memorial, so impressive. And now we're getting a look at what might have been. New artist renderings of U.S. monuments that were designed but never built. Check it out. This is the sculptor's original design for Mount Rushmore, showing more of the presidents along with some of the key moments in U.S. history on the right-hand side. This was the idea for a Native American monument to be built in Staten Island. Sadly, that project scrapped with the advent of World War I. And this one democracy uniting the world was going to build in San Pedro, California. It was envisioned as a Statue of Liberty for the West Coast. There's still time. We can do that on the West Coast. That would be cool. Have you been to Mount Rushmore?
Yes, indeed.
Amazing
Family
stuff
trip
there.
out
Crazy Horse down the road, too. I'm really a special part of the world. Family trip out there?
A must do. When I was, younger with my family, How about you?
All the Smiths in the RV.
We did.
I love it.
Station wagon.
Right, you've just seen the Hemmers in theirs, too. Cranking up the old diamond as we go.
Good stuff. All right, now to this. Facebook shifting focus to privacy. It's laying out a new initiative to help people have private conversations that not even Facebook can access. William Lajeunesse is live in Los Angeles. William, so what exactly are these changes that Mark Zuckerberg is talking about here?
Well, there are several, and it would transform Facebook for users and as a business model, Sandra. Instead of just being a place where people share photos, trade messages, and keep up with friends, CEO Mark Zuckerberg said in an interview and blog post that Facebook would focus on private and encrypted communications. Unlike public posts, which everyone can see and live forever, messages would be private and disappear after a period of time. Zuckerberg also said he would merge Instagram, WhatsApp, and Messenger into a single service so users worldwide could communicate across networks. And I'm quoting, "We're building a foundation for social communication aligned with the direction people increasingly care about, messaging each other privately. I believe a privacy-focused communications platform will become even more important than today's open platforms."
I think Facebook can offer services that give people a lot more privacy in the sense that they are deliberately not sharing their content with a wide circle of friends.
So Zuckerberg said how long a message will last will be up to each user because he said people should not, quote, have to worry about what they share coming back to hurt them. Sandra?
So for all the millions of users out there, William, what does this mean for the Facebook as we know it today?
Well, he said this is going to take, quote, a few years, and I think it's fair to say that Facebook will evolve. It won't change radically. It will offer more options rather than stop doing exactly what it currently does. On the business side, Facebook revenue mostly is derived from selling and allowing advertisers to target users, of course, based on their personal choices. So it's not clear how under this new model with your encrypted communications, would that be available in some form to advertisers?
I could buy into it. I think they could do it, like put up some type of firewalls or some type of things where so nobody can come and take some of my information.
So I think what we're getting from Mark Zuckerberg is he's providing a roadmap as to where this company is going. It's not that competitors, Sandra, don't already do some of these things, right? Messages disappear, encryption is increasingly used, but Facebook is ubiquitous, of course, and they are the giant in the room, if you will.
Absolutely. William Lajeunesse, thank you. And Hemmer, this says this company's got a big job to do to shore up trust for its users in the face of everything that it has faced in recent months and years. And a lot of the tech blogs out there writing about the huge implications of this. And to see Facebook, a company like this, moving in that direction. Privacy is key.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Also, a lot of these media sites, social media sites, are becoming troll farms, too, and I think he's trying to avoid some of that. It's a delicate dance based on the way it's developed so far. So we'll see what Facebook becomes. Very powerful still, though, nonetheless, and making a lot of money.
Yep.
Got this bombshell report now. New development, a corruption case against a former congressman. Aaron Schock was a rising star in the Republican Party. Prosecutors are now dropping all the charges against him. Now, why would that be? He is our guest live today, coming up.
Plus, breaking news on the crisis in Venezuela as a power struggle plays out between the disputed President Nicolas Maduro and opposition leader Juan Guaido and the United States. Governor Bill Richardson, former U.S. ambassador to the UN, will join us next on that.
Nicolas Maduro is a dictator with no legitimate claim to power, and Nicolas Maduro must go.
Possible without it. And, you know, Maduro thinks he's going to wait out Donald Trump. When the president's on something, it's like a dog on a bone. I mean, he will not let go. He is never going to give up on this until Maduro's out of there. Maduro's taken on a terrible enemy in Donald Trump, and the president and his administration deserves tremendous credit. And the Maduro regime is not a government. They are a mafia.
Senator Rubio this morning tipping his hat to the president for his handling of Venezuela as the Maduro regime detains and then releases an American journalist. Cody Weddle was in Venezuela covering Juan Guaido's return. Joining us now, former U.S. ambassador to the UN, Governor Bill Richardson. Governor, thank you and appreciate your time this morning. That American journalist, his last on-air report was Monday, and he was detailing Guaido's return. After defying the travel ban there, he tweeted out, which was his last tweet before he was detained, he had called Guaido's return triumphant. A couple big developments happening in Venezuela as the crisis there continues. Your thoughts this morning, sir?
Well, look, I think we're taking the right position, backing Guaido, insisting that this journalist be freed. You know, Maduro is in trouble. There's no question. We're on the right side. My worry, Sandra, is that we need a diplomatic strategy that leads to free and fair elections supervised by international observers, and the key is the Venezuelan military. The problem is they are still backing Maduro. And, you know, Maduro's been in for close to 10 years. He's pretty resilient. So there's a humanitarian crisis, too, of food and medicine that needs to get to the Venezuelan people. So I support the administration's policy on Guaido, but I think we need a diplomatic strategy, not just sanctions, not just, you know, all kinds of aggressive action. I think we got to get the Pope involved. I think we got to get the UN involved. I think we got to bring Cuba, who backs Maduro, into some kind of diplomatic solution. That's my only worry, that we don't have a strategy accompanying the right position we've taken so far.
They say they have a strategy. Here's Vice President Mike Pence speaking very strongly on this yesterday. We don't have the sound on it? All right. So he is saying we're making it clear to leaders around the world there can be no bystanders in the struggle of Venezuela's freedom. The U.S. calls on every nation on earth to recognize Juan Guaido as Venezuela's president and take the side of freedom. And by the way, this is as John Bolton, the president's national security advisor, is calling on further sanctions. We know that he is putting foreign banks, quote, on notice. Governor, are you suggesting that these sanctions aren't working to put the pressure on Maduro?
Well, no, he's still in power. I'm for the sanctions, and I'm for the strategy, which I think it's over 50 countries are backing Guaido. I'm okay with that. But I think there's got to be an end game, because Maduro is sticking with the Venezuelan military. He's still there. He is defiant. There's a humanitarian crisis. I just don't think sanctions alone, a tough policy, is going to work without a diplomatic strategy that leads to elections and possibly getting Maduro out. That's my only point.
All right. You obviously have your concerns there. As far as North Korea is concerned, here's Ambassador Bolton, the president's national security advisor, on the latest there.
I think the North Koreans obviously would like to give up as little of their nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons and ballistic missile programs as they could. The president wasn't buying it. He said, look, we want a big deal. We want the big deal that will give North Korea a bright future, but which results in complete denuclearization. But he thinks the deal is there if North Korea is prepared to look at the big picture.
And now these new reports of new satellite images coming out of North Korea, possibly suggesting that Kim Jong-un is actually ramping up his nuclear program. What happens next with all of this, Governor?
Well, I believe that both sides need to reassess their position. We need a diplomatic, again, and a strategy on the next steps. We shouldn't abandon just because this summit went bad, and it was a setback for both leaders. I think the North Koreans may be reshuffling their nuclear negotiating leadership. That's good. On this step that they've taken, I've noticed them in the past in negotiating, they ramp up to get more leverage in future negotiations.
Interesting.
I think we need to concentrate on letting our people.
I'm sorry to cut you off there, but we're running out of time. So are you hopeful, like the administration is, Governor, that a deal will eventually get done and another summit will take place and this will continue?
I do think that some kind of agreement will be reached, not at complete denuclearization, but it should be at lower levels, the negotiators, not the president. The president should not go into another summit like he did this last time.
Governor Richardson, great to get your thoughts on all of that this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stunning development in the corruption case against the former Republican Congressman Aaron Schock. Federal prosecutors dropping the charges against him after he promised to repay taxes and campaign committees. Schock saying there's no doubt prosecutors targeted him. You don't hear about this all the time. Charges have been dropped. Leland Vittert live in D.C. to pick up the story from there. Hey, Leland, good morning.
No, good morning to you, Bill. You said stunning, shocking turn of events would be right. Pick your adjective. Prosecutors saying that the payback agreement, as they have now looked at these alleged crimes, is fair and just. This is a far cry from the years in prison Schock faced on multiple charges for wire and mail fraud. The original charging affidavit read like a political thriller, using campaign funds and even government funds for a series of expenditures, including redecorating his office to be like the TV series Downton Abbey, traveling to get haircuts, private jets, flipping tickets to the Super Bowl and World Series at a profit, but not reporting the income. Now, all he has to do is pay back about $68,000, stay out of trouble for 6 months, and reach a settlement with the IRS. With that, he is off scot-free. And as his lawyer pointed out, he did not plead guilty to a single crime. Here's Schock yesterday.
I think it became very obvious to all of us that he saw me as his ticket to stardom. And I know for a fact that shortly after he indicted me, he began lobbying some of my former colleagues to become the next U.S. attorney. And so it becomes very obvious that there were political colors to this case.
You know, you might remember Schock became a rising star in Congress at the age of 27. Obviously, those federal charges derailed his meteoric career, but for a while now, he says, Bill, he's not going to rule out running for office again. Well, stay tuned.
Amazing turn of events here. Lieberman, thank you. As you point out there, later today, Aaron Schock will join us live. He's the former Illinois congressman to explain his case. And as we pointed out a moment ago, doesn't always happen this way. So we'll figure out why. All right, that's coming up 20 minutes now before the hour.
The White House calling out Democrats in the battle over border security.
The president was elected to do exactly what he's doing. Democrats should actually focus on doing their job, not just attacking somebody. People didn't just elect them to come up here and complain. They elected them to come up here and deliver results.
The issue dividing the GOP as a Senate vote looms. So will Republicans split with the president on this and vote to block it? We're going to dig into all that with Senator Ron Johnson.
Also, we're hearing more emotional denials from the singer R. Kelly. What an interview this was. Got the national attention on him after a day in court and this stunning revelation.
You know how many kids need a relationship with their father?
What is your relationship with your children?
Oh, my God.
What is your relationship with your children?
Zero. But I know my kids love me.
Over 290 in the House, depending on who shows up. So the president's won. And when he goes to court, he'll win because the court will say Congress did act. But they couldn't override his veto. So I feel good about what he's doing legally. And I feel like the crisis is real. And he's going to win.
Senator Lindsey Graham there making the case for the president's national emergency declaration. President Trump urging Republicans to stay united ahead of a Senate vote to block it. Senator Ron Johnson, Republican chair of the Homeland Security Committee. How you doing, sir? And good morning to you. I'm seeing as many as 15 Republican senators might vote against the president on this measure. They're making the case, go ahead and take away the emergency declaration. You got a pile of $6 billion, which is more than you wanted originally for the wall. Do you think he's going to take that deal and back down off of that, Senator?
I think there are other reasons why he wants the emergency powers. And, you know, prior Congresses have given any president this authority to act under the National Emergency Act. This president's maybe expanding it, but he has the authority. And Congress has also given him the discretion in these appropriation bills. So I think he's definitely operating within his legal bounds. And from my standpoint, what I hope the Republican Senate does is not give Nancy Pelosi ball control of the United States Senate, but we should come up with our own piece of legislation that basically states what our position is. Republicans in the Senate support building the wall. We want to secure our border. We support the president on that. And to the extent that if we don't like the fact that prior Congresses had given him this authority, or any president this authority under the National Emergency Act, let's change that act. Mike Lee's going to have a bill that I'm co-sponsoring today that does just that. So that's the more appropriate way of doing this, as opposed to voting for Nancy Pelosi's resolution. That doesn't make any sense to me as a Republican in the United States Senate.
You're working against the clock on that, you know. There has to be a vote in this resolution based on law.
Yeah, I think this is pretty simple, Bill. We just come up with our own piece of legislation. We can change the National Emergency Act to return some of this power back to Congress, and we can also appropriate the funds in that same piece of legislation. Now, is anything going to become law? No. Nancy Pelosi's resolution won't become law. Ours probably won't. But a piece of legislation we would pass would be the better piece of legislation.
Okay, interesting. Here's the president from yesterday. He's got a message for Democrats and Republicans in Congress.
I think that really it's a very dangerous thing for people to be voting against border security for anybody, including Republicans. I really think that Republicans that vote against border security and the wall, I think, I've been okay at predicting things. I think they put themselves at great jeopardy.
Check that clearly from Hanoi last week. Here's the tweet from the president now, more recent. Senate Republicans are not voting on constitutionality or precedent. They are voting on desperately needed border security and the wall. Our country is being invaded with drugs, human traffickers, and criminals of all shapes and sizes. That's what this vote is all about. Stay united. Easier said than done?
Well, it is a political vote. We already know that Nancy Pelosi does not have the votes to override a veto, so it's a moot point. So from my standpoint, we should support the president. We do have a crisis at the border. In 2014, President Obama said it was a humanitarian crisis when 120,000 unaccompanied children and people coming in as families across the border illegally and were apprehended. Last year, 145,000 people came in illegally under those same categories. In 5 months, Bill, 159,000 unaccompanied children and family members have come to this country illegally. This is a growing crisis. It's not going away. 159,000 in 5 months versus 120,000 in a year when President Obama called it a humanitarian crisis. It is a crisis. It is an emergency. And Democrats have their heads so far in the sand when they say this is manufactured. This is a real crisis. It's beyond anything we've seen in the past. These are individuals that are coming here exploiting our laws, and they are staying, unlike a few decades in the 2000s when it was Mexican economic migrants that we could return immediately. They would sometimes be apprehended multiple times. So Democrats are comparing apples to oranges. This is a crisis. It is an emergency.
He's concerned about the unity, so we'll see whether or not it happens. Sir, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Ron Johnson, the Republican from Wisconsin. Thank you, Sandra.
Hope in the face of tragedy. Students in the small town of Beauregard, Alabama, helping the community rebuild after a deadly tornado. Our next guest is one of the heroes leading the effort there. Coach Wade Thorne will join us live next.
While there is always uncertainty about what tomorrow might bring, there is absolute certainty.
Possible without it. And, Maduro thinks he's going to wait out Donald Trump. When the president's on something, it's like a dog on a bone. I mean, he will not let go. He is never going to give up on this until Maduro's out of there. Maduro's taken on a terrible enemy in Donald Trump, and the president and his administration deserves tremendous credit. And the Maduro regime is not a government. They are a mafia.
Senator Rubio this morning tipping his hat to the president for his handling of Venezuela as the Maduro regime detains and then releases an American journalist. Cody Weddle was in Venezuela covering Juan Guaido's return. Joining us now, former U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Governor Bill Richardson. Governor, thank you and appreciate your time this morning. That American journalist, his last on-air report was Monday, and he was detailing Guaido's return. After defying the travel ban there, he tweeted out, which was his last tweet before he was detained, he had called Guaido's return triumphant. A couple big developments happening in Venezuela as the crisis there continues. Your thoughts this morning, sir?
Well, look, I think we're taking the right position, backing Guaido, insisting that this journalist be freed. Maduro is in trouble. There's no question. We're on the right side. My worry, Sandra, is that we need a diplomatic strategy that leads to free and fair elections, supervised by international observers, and the key is the Venezuelan military. The problem is they are still backing Maduro. And Maduro's been in for close to 10 years. He's pretty resilient. So there's a humanitarian crisis, too, of food and medicine that needs to get to the Venezuelan people. So I support the administration's policy on Guaido, but I think we need a diplomatic strategy, not just sanctions, not just, all kinds of aggressive action. I think we got to get the Pope involved. I think we got to get the UN involved. I think we got to bring Cuba, who backs Maduro, into some kind of diplomatic solution. That's my only worry, that we don't have a strategy accompanying the right position we've taken so far.
They say they have a strategy. Here's Vice President Mike Pence speaking very strongly on this yesterday. We don't have the sound on it? All right. So he is saying we're making it clear to leaders around the world there can be no bystanders in the struggle of Venezuela's freedom. The U.S. calls on every nation on earth to recognize Juan Guaido as Venezuela's president and take the side of freedom. And by the way, this is as John Bolton, the president's national security advisor, is calling on further sanctions. We know that he is putting foreign banks, quote, on notice. Governor, are you suggesting that these sanctions aren't working to put the pressure on Maduro?
Well, no, he's still in power. I'm for the sanctions, and I'm for the strategy, which I think it's over 50 countries are backing Guaido. I'm okay with that. But I think there's got to be an end game, because Maduro is sticking with the Venezuelan military. He's still there. He is defiant. There's a humanitarian crisis. I just don't think sanctions alone, a tough policy, is going to work without a diplomatic strategy that leads to elections and possibly getting Maduro out. That's my only point.
All right. You obviously have your concerns there. As far as North Korea is concerned, here's Ambassador Bolton, the president's national security advisor, on the latest there.
I think the North Koreans obviously would like to give up as little of their nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons and ballistic missile programs as they could. The president wasn't